can't hear you?
What can't hear me?
I can't, like my mic is not picking you up.
It shouldn't. I mean, it's a sexy mic. It's a sexy mic. You can't hear me saying it's a sexy mic. Now you see that that's why we're getting that random feedback because we're live on YouTube. Let me turn off YouTube real quick. I think just hearing me say it's a sexy mic was definitely interesting over and over again because it's like the YouTube delay. But welcome back to Boss Uncaged podcast. Season 7, episode 27, total episode 251, the season finale. And as you can see, our background's different because the biggest announcement and the reason why you probably haven't seen any like recent episodes is because we're not in the States anymore. Where are we? A to the G.
Are you recording?
I'm recording on YouTube.
Okay.
So, I mean, if you want to record locally, I'll go ahead and record locally as well. Here it goes. There it is, recording locally.
It just makes life much easier when I have to get this. Yes. Uh, season 7 finale, right?
Correct. This is
And
correct.
and we are in Amsterdam, so we are slightly a little discombobulated with the time zone change. And so yes, welcome back. We were able to actually get through a season 7 in the middle of a major international move. And a lot of life changes. So this episode is going to be interesting.
These are facts. So I think that the thing we could start off with it is kind of funny. Like my mom, she called like literally like within the last hour, and she was saying, looking at Facebook, that we don't look stressed.
Think we've learned to fake it at this point.
Yeah. I wouldn't say we're stressed. Tired is probably a better explanation of the jet lag and all the bells and whistles, checklist items, red tape, all the nuances with this move. Like I always say, it's not for the faint of heart. If you get hit with some kind of conflict and you decide to give up at any given time in this process, just don't start. Just like don't even begin the process because you're going to hit hurdles every single possible way known to man and others that you can't even conceive or think about.
That's an understatement. This has been a wild 6 months, definitely. I don't even know how to explain it. It was funny because the day we landed, I started having like jaw pains or whatever. And so I was like, oh crap, I had to find a doctor and yada yada yada. And then so some fancy Googling or whatever. And it could truly just be related to stress, which is like teeth grinding thing, which I've never done before. But that last, I would say 4 or 5 days, uh, was kind of like the final rush to get everything done before we left the country. And I can say we've checked 95% of the boxes that needed to happen before we moved. We got the house at least under contract. That was a very, very stressful time, rushing, trying to move out of our home within like a week's time and get everything ready for it to go to market. That was crazy. Um, but yeah, we made it. We're here. We landed on Friday. We can tell that story. I'll let you tell that story about because you're like king of like sci-fi movies anyway. So this was like right up your sci-fi alley.
Yes. So technically speaking, in my sci-fi brain, we beat the end of the world. We did it. Because like imagine sleeping on a plane, which everyone has done, and cross Atlantic, cross Pacific, or whatever. And you usually wake up and they shove food in your face. Our wake up call was the captain of the plane saying, "Hey, we're getting into our descent. We're X amount away from Amsterdam. And also, by the way, the world has ended because Microsoft has shut down everything. And we're kind of like in a flying pattern to make sure that we could even still possibly land." That type of shit was like, it's happening. Like, we could not have picked a better day and a better time for a better flight to have that actual happen because again we were on the way to land versus being stuck in the airport waiting possibly 24 hours to get on another flight or never get on another flight considering how real the end of the world thing was happening.
Yep. You finally got your sci-fi movie in real life. And then we landed, and as expected, it was
Mhm.
complete chaos. Passport control was backed up. Baggage claim was a completely manual process. Mind you, we bought nine, hold on, 10,
10.
11, 12, 13 with book bags. We had 13 bags um,
Mm.
for all three of us. And trying to make sure we gathered all 13 bags was yeah, I mean, it's just something you can't even explain. It's kind of like if you made it out the other side and now we're in our Airbnb for a month, we start the very fun part about apartment shopping in the Netherlands, which we can talk about separately. Um, and yeah, so I don't know if we're necessarily less stress. I think this is just a lesser level of stress because now we're here and it's like, well, what else can you do? You're here. So it's like it's nothing to really be stressed about at home because home is what it is. We moved girl child into her apartment. She's living her best little college apartment life. You know, we got everything pretty much set up on this side for the most part. So it's not stressful. It's more of it's just new stresses, I guess you can say. So now we get to use the
Yeah.
excuse of we don't know what we don't know. Like we have our checklist, we have things we need to
Mm.
accomplish, but every day we're learning something new almost every minute. So
Yeah, and I think it kind of goes back to like the level of stress is different and unique because we have multiple different factors. Like you are starting a new position, a new opportunity. I am working on converting what I had going on in the US on an international platform, like actually outside the state versus being in the state, reaching outward. I'm across the pond, reaching everywhere, I guess, at this point. And then the third variable was, well, fourth variable was Koi, right? So you talked about Kay moving into her place. So we had to move her in, we had to do all that. And then we also have a college student that, we thought was going to be like empty nesters. And then we ended up with a college student that just, I guess, ironically enough, was smarter than us and figured out a way to come with us abroad. So there's a lot of different moving parts and components, which kind of like let's just talk about the long-term effects of like what is this going to mean for the show? Because I think the first part was we did the episode 250, which essentially aired 3 weeks ago.
yeah, it's 3 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, 3 weeks. And the season finale should have came the week after, but it was so many things going on. And keep in mind, we're still sitting on a plethora of episodes that yes, they can air. And we're getting ready to in the next probably 60 days just pre-plan out all the episodes. Honestly, I'm not going to be recording that many episodes for a period of time because there's a lot of things that I need to do for Boss Uncaged, and we'll talk about that behind the scenes here shortly. But what is it? What do you think is going to be other effects that we're going to have from this international move?
I mean, definitely once I think you get back into the recording cycle of like taking on new episodes, there are going to be some time zone challenges, of course. Now you look when you do some of your international podcasts, it may get easier. So if you're recording with someone from Australia now, you cut off 6 hours, I think, roughly from that time. Or I don't know. And then, but on the alternative side of it, now if you're interviewing people in the US, you have to now consider those time zone differences. Technology, I mean, to feel highly transparent. Right now we're in the Airbnb, right now we're in the same room. We are our apartment house shopping. And so we don't know what the podcast setup is going to look like once we move or what availabilities we're going to have as far as technology, as far as simple things like internet. So that may kind of cause some delays in your ability to kind of kick off re-recording. Like you think you just mentioned, luckily we have an incredible backlog of episodes where we can go ahead and just get some things kind of pre-planned and scheduled out and you can pop in maybe I don't know, a bonus episode or something at some point, just midway through, see how things are going. But it's one of those things I know from a technology standpoint, we may have some challenges. And just from a where do you have the ability to record? I know you've always said, oh, I want to record outside. If you were outside right now, it'd be a wonderful plane going over, which I don't know if anyone can hear the plane right now, but it's a plane going over. There are kids playing in the background because we don't live in this quiet suburban neighborhood anymore. I've asked to move to New York and we have literally moved to New York, literally. So.
Yeah, well, the original New York. So talk about like history. I mean, obviously, the ideal place that you wanted to move to was New York, and I'm originally from New York, and it was just kind of like we definitely don't want to do that. Any New Yorker that's from New York, you're always going to be a New Yorker. You're always going to love New York. But once you kind of leave New York for a period of time and you want to explore versus being landlocked in Brooklyn and not knowing your next door neighbor or never being to the Bronx or never being to Jersey because the only thing you do is stay on that one body of land your entire life. It gets to the point to where I think where we are right now, Amsterdam is the original New York, right? I mean, obviously New York is named after that. Harlem is named after Harlem from Netherlands. Brooklyn is named after Brooklyn from the Netherlands. So I think this is definitely a great compromise. And it also opens up the bandwidth to cultural differences, which you would have got in New York. I mean, kind of where we are right now, the cultural differences that we see, and we've only been here 48 hours, is completely ridiculous. It is completely, you don't know anyone, like you could look at someone in New York and be like, oh, they're from Brooklyn or they're from Atlanta. Over here, you don't know. I mean, anyone could be, it could be an Asian guy speaking Russian, or it could be like a European looking guy with an island accent. There's no telling where anyone's from at all in this country.
Yeah, we've definitely moved into a cultural melting pot. That we kind of knew
Mm,
Amsterdam or Netherlands as a whole is like
mm,
that, but once you're here and you're part of it every day, I mean, we're walking down the street and we're hearing languages and accents from literally all over the world, which is, I think it's an awesome thing to be a part of. So I think both of us just try to take every moment of it, like minute by minute in some cases, and just
mm,
absorb as much as we can, learn as much as we can, realizing, shout out, very unsponsored Duolingo has been actually teaching us a little bit of Dutch. Like I know words that I can actually see and understand. And, so high five, I'm like almost 300 days on Duolingo. And
mm,
while I may not be able to read it fluently or write fluently, I can now, out of 10 words, probably understand seven of them and then figure out the other three. So, or at least figure out how to figure out the
mm.
other three. So that part actually trying to learn the language before moving here, if anyone is thinking of moving to another country, is a bonus as much as you can. Try to learn as much about the language as possible because even though, in the Netherlands, they speak English, pretty regularly for the most part, but there are still a lot of simple things that are still in Dutch. And you want to be able to just, you know, be able to read something and know exactly what's going on in that moment instead of having to search for an English translation or ask somebody for an English translation. So it is helpful to, or it has been helpful for us to, you know, work with Duolingo in order to kind of learn the language. And, if you know Mr. Grant on the other side of the thing, he does not like to pay for anything. So he fought for a very, very, very long time to not pay for Duolingo. And they got you the other day because of the time zone.
Damn. And see, the thing is, I mean, like I'm a real big strategist with like the overlap. So like literally every 7 days, Duolingo will be like, "Hey, you want a free trial?" And I'm like, if you want to keep giving me free trials, by all means, I'll keep doing these free trials. And then I always set these reminders to Alexa. And right now we don't have Alexa, we don't have Google, Siri. I'm not going to bash Apple, but unfortunately, the time zone shift, flying on a plane, and the day that I was supposed to cancel the subscription, I was in flight, and it billed me, and I was just like, son of a bitch. Like, what percentages of people are actually doing that? How many percentages of people that actually get that conversion factor because they do the trials? And I think that's just a business strategy, which is kind of leading me into like the strategy of what you're talking about with languages. I think is a phenomenal education thing for people to really understand. Like if someone is in the US, and I'm talking from a cultural standpoint, and they're coming overseas, first of all, they went through what we went through just to get there, and probably even 10 times even harder because they're coming from a country. And US borders are, I'm not going to get into the politics, but ideally they're coming over there, they're learning a new language. So when they're having that conversation with you and it's kind of choppy, or they're kind of like, what's that word? The word, and they know the word in their language, but they don't know the word in actual English. That's what we're talking about. And that's what Alex was just describing. It's kind of like, some words, and some words you don't know the translation of it. you know how to read some subtext, but you don't know all the words. So a lot of times you'll see us, and I'm creating the content like that as well to be very transparent. I'll read something in Dutch and be like, okay, that word means cheese. That word means spinach. That word means chicken. Oh, that's a chicken croissant stuffed with cheese and spinach. But I had to like literally process each individual word, consolidate them together, and then figure out what it is versus just a native who just look at it and be like, yeah, I want the spinach and cheese croissant chicken roll. So it's definitely one of the things. I not only do I have more respect for individuals that are coming across the pond, but if you're listening and you have someone that is attempting to speak your native tongue, your native language, and they're choppy and they're not like as fluent as you are, give them a pat on the back and be more appreciative because again, that shit is not easy by no means, no matter how old you are, unless you're born into a multicultural, multilingual household.
I can't say it any better.
Yes, yes. So, I mean, let's talk about like general updates. I mean, obviously, I think in the period of time, with all this craziness, and in the past year, we've been talking about this new website, this new website. So, finally, our new website went live. It's not 100% done and complete. Like the team has been working nonstop for roughly a year behind the scenes developing out this website. We have about maybe like 150 pages done out of like 1,100. So we still have 900 pages to do. And again, like we're consolidating all our different platforms. You know, we have to do redirects, all these different. I'm not going to bore you with all the tech behind the scenes, but the fact is that the website is live. It is by far not perfect. But again, I'm really big on taking action and moving forward and figuring things out. And some is better than none. And again, we waited an entire year to get here. But, you know, if you get a chance, check out bossuncaged.com. The old Cerebral, if you remember Cerebral, that's getting ready to fade to black. And it's kind of heart wrenching because, you know, I did everything to build that corporation, to build that identity, to get the trademarks. And right now I'm looking at them like, why the hell do we still have this? Like, it has nothing to do with, I mean, it's a similar, but the name Boss Uncaged has such a better ring and tonality and appreciation than Cerebral. So I guess I can make the announcement Cerebral is going to be buried and it's not alive. So it's okay. It's not being buried alive. It's dead. So I'm making it official. Goodbye, Cerebral.
It's unalive. I think that's what the children say now. But
Mm, yeah.
no, it's just it's growth. So you Cerebral was your baby when all of this started.
Mm.
Um, over 20 years ago now. I'm gonna age you a little bit. And
Well,
now,
it's
you know,
obvious the gray hair makes me look a little rustic a little bit. Yeah.
and then the Boston Cage brand popped up, right before COVID, and it just seemed like the natural like transition for that. That is that Boston Cage is when you became you. We talk about this all the time. That's when
Mm.
you stood in front of the camera and you became Boston Cage. So it didn't make sense to continue to hold on to the Cerebral brand anymore. And yeah, I checked out the website the other day. It looks good. I mean, for the most part, like I said, like he said, go ahead, check it out, bossandcage.com. Does it still have the sex word in it?
Oh, well, right now, all our domains are still in existence. So mysuccessx.com is still up, Cerebral is still up, but these are all temporary. I mean, again, if my team is listening to this right now, if they're watching it, because, they're always kind of like, they'll send me random messages about something that I did. So ideally, I'm saying right now, before I even send you the message to go ahead and redirect Cerebral 360 to bossandcage.com, I'm telling you to go ahead and redirect Cerebral 360 to bossandcage.com, which is, yeah. Again, I try not to be emotional when it comes to business. I try to cut it. So, like, I'm literally, like she said, it's been 20 years of effort and strategies and everything else, but all those things have made Boston Cage what it is right now. All those things were the foundations and the building blocks to make Boston Cage the platform that it is. And if I didn't go through that, I don't think we would have been here right now. I'd have been pulling my teeth trying to figure things out. And more so, it's more technology figuring out nowadays than strategy and everything else that I already did time and time again. So,
You want me to sing? It's so hard to say goodbye to
yeah,
yesterday.
sing it, girl.
I'm losing
And
my
then
mind.
you got to hit that note. Take with you the memories. You got to hit that. Got to hit that because like we're near in the kitchen right now, and the deck is wide open. So potentially, people are probably listening to random things that we're saying right now and probably shaking their heads like these damn American renters are like awkward and weird. Yes,
And we
but
are
go ahead.
awkward and we are weird.
Yes, this is a fact. This is a fact, which is kind of interesting because I mean I think we've had some documenting the process of where we were and where we are. And I think I've been documenting Boss Uncaged from day one, just with like the content that we've been creating. And then we started doing more content on the move. And it kind of leads me to, being an author and potentially, like my next book is definitely going to be like the Boss Uncaged book that, I'm hoping that Damon still wants to write the forward for. I kind of put that on pause right now because of this move, but that's my next book that's going to be released. But potentially in the next year or so, I think co-writing a book with you about this move and Boss Uncaged and just understanding like corporate America, understanding the politics, understanding like the logistics, like all the nuances, the red tape that goes into an international move. And how does that then affect you, your kids, your business, your livelihood, selling house? I mean, we pretty much went through like, what is it called? The 4 Ds? Is it death, divorce, um, um, like relocating. I forgot the initials, but it's essentially those are like the biggest things you can go through in life, right? So if you want to think about it at scale, in the last like this year, we dealt with a death, very close death, right? We dealt not only with selling a house, but we dealt with an international move. We dealt with a kid graduating high school, getting ready to go to college. We dealt with another kid deciding to say, you know what, I'm not going to come overseas with you, and I want to move into my own apartment in Tennessee. Like that's a lot of things that most people deal with over a lifetime, and we dealt with that literally in 180 days. Like I want you to really think about that. Like 180 days worth of 18 years of things that could have happened all happened in that past 6 months.
Yeah, it's I can't even say it's alcohol because both of us have really stopped drinking for the most part. I don't think alcohol would have
Yeah.
helped us get through that at all in any kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
So when people ask, so how are things going? And, what is the stress like? You just keep moving forward. It's not an option not to move forward. I think that's both of our mindset. Like, what's the alternative? Okay, that's just not even our
Yeah.
personality. So we check the box of deaths in the family and moves across the ocean and kids that didn't want to come and surprise kids that did want to come. We didn't know. And we had a lot of special moments with friends and family, saying goodbyes and throwing events for us that we're incredibly, incredibly appreciative of. I am very, 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 very much an introvert. And
Mm-hmm.
so I am the complete opposite of a social butterfly. And sometimes those moments in the beginning going into it, I immediately felt a little uncomfortable because I don't like to be the center of attention, number one. And then number two, just I like to be on my couch with my book and my dog. Oh, that's right. We don't have a dog right now because he also decided well, he didn't get to decide to stay. We chose that he stayed with our daughter in Tennessee. But, looking back on it, I think, I know for myself personally, I needed those moments to just hang out with close friends, to hang out with family, and be able to laugh and talk about old times and, threaten everybody's life about how they're going to come here in 2025 and visit us. Even though Mima, shouting out Mima, she gets a pass. She gets 2026. Mima and Bruce get 2026. But, looking back, that was probably over the last 6 months the best part of everything, just having these moments of getting together with friends and family. And it wasn't really sad moments in anything. It was just really happy, joking, like goodbyes that, real world of technology. I could FaceTime anyone that I wanted to right now. So it's not a matter of not being able to see people. Yes, I may not be able to get up in my car and go and drive to Lynn Jeremy's house, which was like around the corner. But, I think the unexpected kind of benefit of it is that we really got to spend some time with some really, really good friends over the last couple of months. Would you say that?
Yeah, 100% agree. And kind of going back to what you said earlier, I'm not gonna let that just slide because anyone that knows us, right? Like we've never had a actual argument except for one time that we truly bumped heads, and it wasn't even really an argument. It was just kind of like trying to figure out how to deal with the situation. Because at one point in time, and I'll be brutally honest, between you and Kay, I say you people, right? You people were damn animal herders, right? You guys were like hoarding animals. And don't get me wrong, like I love animals. I love seeing them at the zoo. It's kind of like having someone else's kid come over. You high five that kid, you give them candy, and you send their crazy ass home with their parents. That's the way I like animals. So we got to the point to where we had so many damn animals. So it's like I felt like we had to move overseas to have zero animals. And don't get me wrong, Seven, he grew on me. Like that's my dude. I wouldn't say he's my dog. He's my dude. But unfortunately, he's a fat bastard, and that's why he's not here. Because that's another thing about logistics. There's a logistical weight limit for fat ass dogs, and their cages combined to be, what was it, 100 kilograms or whatever it was. And his ass was pretty much 95% of that by himself without a cage. So, and she kept on saying for like 6 months, he's going to lose weight as his weight. He was like the damn, like a bull in the market watching the damn tickers just go up. And I was like, just keep on investing in that fat ass stomach of his. Let it keep on growing because you're not coming overseas with us. And I said it every single day because his ass kept getting fatter. So yes, I digress. Continuing to what you were saying, yes, I think the family, the friends, I think if we missed anything from the US per se, besides like the landscape.
Waffle House. I'm gonna miss
Oh
Waffle
yeah,
House.
yeah. I think we could find something, if not equivalent, something that we can kind of say, hey, this is our go-to staple over here. So yes, the food is a bit different, but again, there's so much more food and cuisine to explore over here. But I think we cannot necessarily replace the partnerships, the mentorships, the friendships, the families, the connections that we had overseas. But again, kind of looking at it from a perspective of technology, bridging the gap. Like I'm so happy that one, my mom has an iPhone. Two, she knows how to use FaceTime, because if she didn't, she probably would have died the second we got on the plane. Like she would have, and I'm gonna be frank, she probably would have had a stroke the moment that we got on the plane, not knowing how to. If we did this back in the 90s, before technology is where it is right now, I would have to kind of get back on the plane and go to her funeral, like literally. So giving her opportunity to reach out whenever she wants and having this opportunity to talk to our friends. And I think for us is great because we're early birds. But now that we're early birds and 6 hours ahead, technically speaking, we have an advantage to get a day, damn near 2 days of stuff done before anyone wakes up. I mean, right now in the US, it is, what time is it? It is 10:30 a.m. Like the day just started. It just became Sunday for them, and it's pretty much afternoon for us at this point. So to support what you're saying, I think it goes hand in hand with, we will have to start figuring out new friendships, new partnerships over here as well, not to replace the ones that we've lost, but to continue and grow and expand on what we've built overseas.
So I don't get another dog. I'm just kidding. I can't cheat on Seven. I can't cheat on Seven. But going back to what you originally said that got us on this conversation of us eventually working potentially towards a book together on this process, documenting, all the logistics of it and, the things. Oh my God, a lot of things, removing the emotional attachment to things. I think seeing like a TJ Maxx or Marshalls or Ross at this point, I was telling him like gives me complete anxiety now just because it's just things that we either sold or gave away, or at the end of it, we were calling 1-800 junk man to come and pick it up because it was just stuff that we've accumulated
I
over
want you
our
to stop
entire.
right there for a second. I want you to think about, like, this is so frustrating for me because it's kind of like, I'm not gonna say I'm frugal, but like I always look at the numbers, and I'm like, and I backtrack like, hey, we spent X amount to buy whatever. In addition to, we spent X amount of gas to drive to buy whatever, right? And then obviously it depreciates, the value goes down, much like buying a car. And then we started giving it away at really cheap. So we were losing capital there, right? And then we got to the point to where selling it was taking too long. Then we started giving some stuff away. And then we got to the point that we was throwing things away. And like I cried internally for the numbers. The numbers in my mind was just like, I'm not buying shit. I'm not buying nothing, because it's completely worthless when you get to the point to where we are transitioning between different countries or different locations. Like you had it, you enjoyed it, and then you're just throwing it in the trash. And considering that you spent retail, even though I look for red tags, but the reality is it's used in retail, and then we just threw it away. Like, I mean, that whole cultural difference of as far as buying things versus making investments, and it kind of really goes back into understanding assets versus liabilities. Again, if you're not buying an asset, essentially, no matter what it is that you're buying, it's a liability. In this case, it was the random stuff that we have accumulated over the years or whatever. They were hella liabilities because we could not just leave them in the house. We could not just throw them in the dumpster. We had to physically pay someone to come and get these piece of shit liabilities out of the home in order for us to then sell the asset. What the? From a business standpoint, I felt like I wasn't the boss at that point. I was just like, holy shit,
Do you want to tell
never
your
again.
story about Goodwill?
Man, Goodwill is such a frustrating environment. And again, I'm not here to knock other corporations because again, corporations are ran by individuals. And at the same time, your employees are running the companies for these individuals. And unfortunately, the employees at Goodwill absolutely suck diaper dookie, wet, sloppy diaper dookie through straws.
I wouldn't say all. I would just say there were a few instances where we were attempting to donate some very nice stuff, and due to maybe just
Diaper dookie,
laziness, they
diaper
just
dookie.
didn't feel like accepting
Mm,
things for various
mm,
reasons. So, I mean, it was always kind of the thing. I knew we were going to get to a point where we were going to be in donating items. So I was very cautious about the organizations that we would donate to. And then we kind of just got to the end of it. And it was just like, okay, let's just take the rest of this stuff, to Goodwill, because they are a reseller. And, I've shopped at Goodwill. So trust me, I know. And that became very frustrating towards the end of, these are very nice chairs, nice tables, nice items that could go to people who need them. And sometimes it was just a matter of, oh, I don't feel like helping you get it off the truck
mm.
or dealing with it.
You're
Uh,
being polite. You're
I
like
am
you're
because
sugarcoating it.
I'm
Let me say it frankly. We went to several locations, right? And out of several locations, 85% of them gave us shit for bringing too many items to donate. And again, the entire business is ran off of donations. So I want you to think about that. I'm an ice cream vendor and they're delivering ice cream, and I'm saying, hey, you're bringing too much ice cream. Okay, like what do you mean? Like it's the only thing I sell is the ice cream that you're bringing me, but I'm saying you're bringing too much ice cream. So what am I going to sell if I don't have any ice cream? That's the equivalent of them saying you're bringing too much stuff to donate. And I was just like, are you kidding me? And it wasn't one location, it wasn't two locations, it was several locations. And then they had attitudes on top of it, like no hello, how are you doing, no greetings. It was kind of like we had to physically help them do their jobs just in order for them to get paid. And that part of it completely pissed me off. Like I wanted to go back to Brooklyn, change my clothes, go into the bathroom and wait till they take their break. And you know what I'm saying? Just handle it. But I didn't go that far, unfortunately.
well, we'll save it for the book that we will work on
Mm,
about the process of moving overseas, and just because when
mm,
like I said, we're learning things as we go, so
mm,
maybe there's goodwill here, I don't know. But I know you asked me this question before about you know challenges that you foresee with the podcast. I mentioned
mm.
technology. I mentioned where we're going to be able to record. I mean, luckily we have the ability to take some time off from active recording in order to be able to figure these things out. But what challenges do you see?
Man, I think one of the ones that we talked about, it's a gift and a curse. I mean, obviously, having different levels of revenue and monetization, one of the features that we're going to have to turn off, to be quite frank and honest, is the monetization. Because monetization of our podcast, one aspect of it, which is the expedited episodes. And keep in mind, like we've recorded hundreds of episodes. That's how the backlog came. Some people will say, well, why don't you then increase and release more episodes? And, obviously doing the study and doing the research, doing an episode a day does not really convert as well as maybe 1 to 2 episodes per week, because again, not everyone has opportunity and time to sit down, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and listen to an episode every single day. Somebody may have a week and be like, okay, a new episode came out. It came out on Tuesday, and they may not listen to it on Thursday, and they may not listen to it till Saturday, they may not listen to it Sunday, and then again, they do the same thing next week. So flooding the market with so abundance of content that heavily kind of does yourself a disservice. Hence why we had Expedited. But with Expedited, we can't, like, prime example, the 3 weeks that we've missed, we would not have missed those 3 weeks if we didn't have Expedited as an option, because again, we have an episode that we could pre-plan episodes out for 2 years and just hit submit and walk away. And you'll think that Boss Uncaged is still doing what it's doing, and we haven't even touched the podcast in a year. But now we're going to have to go to that. So I'm saying, okay, well, with that being an option on the table to kind of reduce the opportunity for someone to buy Expedited, then how do we then kind of keep people satisfied with release schedules? So that's something that I'm thinking about. Like, do we then go to a 2 episode a week at max to kind of help reduce that gap and that buffer with all the episodes? But then later on, there may be side effects of that. Like once we do catch up, then I'm going to have to like record way more episodes to be way more frequent, which will kind of take away from the strategy behind the scenes and the business behind Boss Uncaged. So there's a gift and curse. There's different strategies we have to talk about. I mean, happily, we're in the Netherlands, and, you know, marijuana is not legal, but legal. So
It's not legal, it's tolerated.
it's tolerated. Yes, yes. So for everyone that heard about oh, I can't wait to get to the Netherlands to smoke up that tree, yes, you can do that, but it's in particular locations you can do that. You can't just smoke trees on the train or smoke in a park. Like, there's restrictions to where and how and what you can do. But obviously, I still say come visit, because again, it's just a beautiful location to where I would say they're very progressive, and I think that's one of the things that really attracted us to where we are right now. It's progressive, but obviously there's still bureaucracy, there's still politics, and giving us a new start in a new place with everything we've learned overseas. Can we do what we did in the US here? That's the question. Like, that's where, you know, could Boss Uncaged become a #1 podcast in Netherlands, like how it's done months before in the US? Could we then start interviewing more Dutch natives, much like how we were interviewing a lot of US born natives? And again, like, that's the things that I'm thinking about, like the pros and the cons and the possibilities, and kind of going with what you said about the time frame. I think the time 6 hours ahead helps us, because obviously it will restrict some Americans, but it opens up the bandwidth for the other half of Asia, the other half of like Australia. It kind of like Australia's window. And I've had people before say, hey, the window that you have, essentially for my time frame, is 7 a.m. to, let's say, 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. But over there, that's the opposite end. Like, that's like 3 a.m. Who the hell wants to get on a podcast at 3 a.m. unless they do or die? So kind of shifting the hours gives an opportunity for us to be more global and have more global impact. But there's a lot of logistics that we're going to have to iron out, because someone in the US may see our calendar and be like, why the hell is he doing a podcast at 3 a.m.? Well, it's 3 a.m. your time, it's 9 a.m. our time. So it's just these little things that we'll have to grow and prosper through and figure out and iron out the wrinkles as they approach.
Do you think, I know the core kind of topic of the podcast is interviewing entrepreneurs and business owners about the journey. I know we kind of touched on this a little bit, like in our personal conversations. Do you think that that's going to change? Yes, your guest may be slightly more international now, but will it still be the same topics? I guess I'm trying to ask.
So, being that I'm a strategist in nature, and I always think about the long-term plan. Now, obviously, if we stay that path, we would have an unlimited abundance of interviews, because again, next generation, third generation down, older people, again, your story is your story. So there's no limitation. But I'm thinking about potentially either letting Boss Uncaged ride, and Boss Uncaged the network then probably start focusing more on a niche market. I mean, we have the foodie podcast, we have the book podcast, and getting ready to like launch those on a more international platform versus having them localized and based upon times and streaming live, probably more in the staycation. But niching down in the business aspect of what we do and how we do it is the next phase of Boss Uncaged. Now, that topic I think as business goes, business is always designed about what are you doing for like doing, like what's your service, but then it all comes down to the monetary, like how are you making money? And again, I think that's why people like coming on Boss Uncaged, because again, it gives them opportunity to tell their story in a different way that later on could help them convert, because they're telling stories. They may get more business because of the story. They may get more opportunities because of their story. But what does that look like in a particular industry? And that industry is the next choice that we're going to have to make. What that industry is going to look like as far as niching down, I think we have some things on the table, but we have not concluded to which one yet.
So with the unaliveness of cerebral and
Mm,
the potential, you know, growth of Boss Cage, do you want to talk a
mm.
little bit about Omni Media?
Yeah, I think Omni Media, it was kind of like I try to protect myself in the sense that, if I had came out with like Boston Cage Real Estate, then by default, the only thing you expect us to talk about is real estate. Omni Media, for someone that's like in media or understand the terminology, they understand what Omni means. And Omni is a collective. It is essentially like Google misspelled is Omni, right? It's like they're in everything, but at the same time, they're technology in everything. So going into the Omni Media, yes, it's going to talk about digital marketing. Yes, we're going to have digital marketing aspects to it. But eventually, I think the digital marketing that we do for clients today, we're probably going to get to the point to where we're going to have less and less clients, and all the media and marketing we're going to be doing is going to be internal. So if we decide to go to real estate, or go to investments, or go to app building, app development, all the things that we're going to be doing would be the media for that app, or the media for the real estate, or the media for um, the the longevity of that situation comes down to the isolation, and that's when we're going to kind of figure out what we're going to do next. But I think Omni Media is the overarching umbrella. I think it is definitely the holding cell, and then everything else under that is it's obviously going to be branded Boston Cage, but it's going to be Boston Cage what? So right now it's Boston Cage Omni Media, and then that's the umbrella, and then everything else falls underneath that. And again, over time, probably the next 6 months, I'll probably be able to dial into that a little bit more. I think we've had some sidebar conversations about next steps, considering that I'm in a new country, we're in a new place. Nobody doesn't really know. Like in the US, yeah, we have people in multiple different cities and states. And I could pick up the phone and be like, hey, I'm flying into Richmond. And we kind of can do that over here, but it's way more spread out. So from playing from a pond aspect to now playing in the ocean, it's just a different ballgame.
Definitely a way
Mm-hmm.
different pond. I don't even know how to describe it.
Yeah, it's I think it kind of, there's, I think before, there's drops, then there's glasses, then there's, ponds, rivers, lakes. And I think now where we are, considering that we've bridged the literal ocean, I think now we're playing in the ocean. And I'm not saying that we're minnows, and I'm not saying that we're obviously not sharks in the ocean, right? So like, where do we fall into this equation? Are we going to be the ones that's going to be swimming with the sharks, kind of eating what they're eating? Or are we going to be more so hunting the sharks indirectly? I mean, there's so many different ways to play off of the nuances of what we're talking about right now, but we just don't know yet. Like, we have different dominoes lined up, but now we have to kind of bring them together to make that sequence of a chain reaction happen.
So you are the king of networking, as I call you. So what's
Mm-hmm.
your strategy for that? What's your strategy to try to build your new environment? I know you have a meeting, I think, next week with a
Mm-hmm.
gentleman that is based out of the Netherlands. You all were supposed to meet virtually last week and the move and whatnot, but now you guys get to sit down across from each other. So that's ding automatically one new connection that you've made in the Netherlands. But
Yeah.
what would you kind of say is your strategy to kind of start to build your network here?
Man, there's so many different strategies that I think we talked about. I mean, obviously, one of them, coming from a what I did in the US, was trying to figure out opportunities to whether that people are going to bring me in as a consultant, or to find a part-time opportunity to work for a corporation that's doing or part of what I'm doing, or ideally I could bring something to them, and they could give me something back and come in and help them grow. in addition to that, it was the other aspect of it, like going back to general networking, like finding these opportunities. And again, through podcasting, because the person that I'm going to meet Wednesday came as a referral from a person that I met from another referral from a person that I interviewed on the podcast. So, like understanding that chain reaction, I always say that podcast is probably the best non-secretive, right in your face that you don't think about level of networking, and it's more personal. Like having an opportunity to sit down with somebody one-on-one for 30 minutes or to an hour, yeah, it can happen, but you have to go through so much bureaucracy to kind of get to that point. And usually it's more so who's trying to sell what versus on a podcast, you're not really trying to sell anything. The only thing you're trying to do is tell the story of that person, which then builds the bond between you and the individual. If you're telling that story well, if you're asking insightful questions, if they start to look at you a little bit differently at the end of that podcast, they should want to not only talk to you again, they want to sit down and have a beer with you. They want you to come travel and meet them somewhere. So that's the general thing that I'm going for is through podcasting. Like when I go to this meeting Wednesday, I'm going to try to not only get him on the show, but who else do you know that's in the Netherlands or that's in Europe that's looking for an opportunity to be on a international podcast, and not international in the sense that I've interviewed people in Spain or I interviewed people and I'm based in the US. We did that in the US and now we're changing that and now we're doing it across the board. So we're an anomaly in the equation because most people, they're landlocked to wherever they are. And right in the middle of our season 7, going into season 8, we decided to completely shift that. So every episode that we record from this moment forward are technically international episodes, whether they're going to be based in Australia or whether we're interviewing someone from the US. Everything we do at this point is going to be completely international with that scope of mind and that aspect to it. So networking through podcasting is going to be my primary means, which kind of goes back to what you were saying before, recording those episodes. So I'm going to be a little bit more hard on when I record, why I record, and how I'm recording, because again, I'm starting from zero. This is not, I can kind of just go into the bank and say, here's my credit. This is who I am. Or, hey, I've been living in the US for this long. Like I've been in this country 2 days. I haven't even essentially filed from like my LLC or my business license. So just going through those processes of figuring out how to do it, why to do it. Obviously, taxes are different here than there are in US. Because like you know me and you know US taxes. I'm always like itemize. Can I even itemize here? Is itemization even a word in their dictionary? Like that's because if it's not, then I have to come up with a complete new strategy, right? And I think you said like you're done being my accountant. You fired me.
I did. I'm done.
You fired me. So now I have to figure out, okay, are there accountants here? Is a CPA a real thing here? Is there international CPAs? So we're not talking about local no more. Before it was like, hey, you worked in Georgia your entire life. Great. You worked in the US. Great. Now we're saying, okay, do you have clients that are in US and abroad? Do you have clients that are in US and in Europe? Do you have clients? So it's a whole different ball game, completely different strategy. And I think for what we do and who we are, and titling our podcast Boss Uncaged, we are living that shit. Like we are uncaged bosses 100%, considering that we're damn overseas now. Like this, like we literally gave everything up and moved overseas to start completely fresh with strategies behind us to do it all over again in our early 40s. We're batshit crazy.
Yeah, that part with or without the move. But, I think like you said, it is that kind of goes along with something that I know you're really good at about putting the things that you need out into your network via Facebook. We had posted something probably 6 months ago or more now about needing an international tax accountant and international attorney. And our, and your, Facebook friends or whatever, they came through with a bunch of people. We put out something floating in there. We put out, we needed an electrician, we needed a garage person, we needed a cleaner. Boom. In 24 hours, we had all of those 3 individuals in our house whatsoever. So yeah, like I said, you've always been the king of networking. So I'm really not super concerned about you coming over here and starting to rebuild your network or rebuild your group from a professional standpoint at all. Yeah, it's just like I said, every day is something different. Every day is something new. And every day we have a decisioning point, to say, are we going to do it this way or are we going to do it this way? And that's kind of the beauty of, in a sense, starting over. Like when you think about it, we are starting over, in this completely new environment. Um,
Bruh.
which is, like I
Bruh.
said, I'm not complaining. I have not really been unhappy since the moment that I landed here. I mean, it's actually, I'm glad I did take some time off to kind of woosah before we start
You
to
ain't
get
take
back
no
into the
damn
work.
time off.
I am,
She's
I'm
lying
off.
to you. She's lying to you, listener. She did.
I
She
will
took.
take some time
Oh
off
yeah.
once we get a school schedule from Coy and we can kind of navigate a vacation. We will, I'm putting this out there, we will go on a vacation. We've skipped anniversaries, we've skipped birthdays, we've skipped a lot of vacations to make this move happen. And yeah, as soon as we get the school schedule and figure out how that works, so we would definitely be on somebody's beach somewhere.
So I think it's funny that you said that because I mean, people that seen all the images and stuff that we travel a lot. So by default, they're just saying like they looked at you when you said that and said you're an absolute damn liar. You didn't go on no vacations. You guys been all over the damn planet in the past like year or two. But to your point, I think the last time we actually been on an actual legit vacation was Japan.
That was December. Yeah. So December. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like legit. I mean, we were back and forth to Amsterdam a couple of times, but one time was over spring break. It wasn't a vacation. It was trying to figure out if this kid actually wants to come over here to see it, to actually say, okay, you want to come over here? Well, like check it out first before you commit to it. Because once you're over here, right? And also all the legalities that we have to go through. Like his visa is different than our visa. Your visa is kind of different than my visa. It's like I'm in the gray space of visas as an entrepreneur. Maybe rub my nipple, but so yeah. So for you, I think your title is beautiful, like knowledge migrant. Like this is the definition of that. It's so sexy, and by default, I'm kind of under that, but at the same time, I'm that, but I'm not that, right? And then Coy is a student. He's on a student visa. So, just to understand these premises, as a student coming over here, it's a completely different ball game than as a migrant worker versus an entrepreneur. All three of these are different categories, different everything, different legalities, different just to make it happen. And we had to do all three of them at the same time.
Yeah.
All three of them at the same time.
Yes, we're very lucky. We had some help with
Yeah.
some of it, especially from my job. Yeah, the knowledge migrant, I guess, title is interesting in a sense because it's like you're coming over here because of the knowledge that you have about a certain industry or knowledge or your expertise in a certain industry. And you see those, I guess, social media posts about all of these countries essentially having the was it mo God, I can't think of the word now. My brain just stopped. But the different
Nomads.
nomad visas, yeah, and
Yeah.
whatnot. But do your research. There are a lot of countries that are looking for knowledge migrants. I'm not sure if it's called that in every single country, but are looking for that expertise from the US to come to the countries and then bring that knowledge to them. Unfortunately, going back to the US side is incredibly difficult. I've talked to a lot of my colleagues that have done the move from Europe to US. It just again blows my mind how hard it is to have knowledge, expertise brought into the US from other countries, but we won't go down that road. Yeah, sorry, but we will be watching the election and in November from afar and do our absentee ballot. But whoo, it's crazy. But to your point, when you see those posts, do your research, take advantage of it. You as an individual probably sitting on this knowledge and this expertise, and it can be used in other countries, and that could help support your move in some kind of way. So, and like I said, with Coy and the student visa thing, we have to remind Coy every once in a while he's on a student visa. You have to stay in school in order to remain in the country. This is not like the US where you can drop out of school and you still have somewhere to live. No, they will kick you out. So this again kind of rolls into like this book idea we've been playing around with about, how do we make this move from an entrepreneurial standpoint, from a corporate standpoint, now from a student standpoint. That is a major kind of weight to have on your shoulders that if I don't do well in school and I get kicked out, I get kicked out of the country also. And I'm sure there are people who are listening, friends that you have who have also come to the US on student visas, and it's probably the same thing. But yeah, maybe
Yeah.
just save all this juiciness for, I guess, a book. Because
Yeah, I think definitely. And I think it kind of goes back to what we talk about on Boss Uncaged. Okay, we talk to entrepreneurs, business owners, founders, and no matter where you are in our planet, as of right now, until we get to Mars, and even when we get to Mars, it'll be the same principles. Everything that we have in our world from time and time again has always been established from an entrepreneur mindset. Like the top 1% are entrepreneurs or were entrepreneurs at one given time before they became executives and everything else. So if you think about it from that aspect, a student visa, yes. But the beautiful part about that, again, because we have the three different things going on, like she has the corporate side, I have the entrepreneur, and he's a student visa, and we want him to kind of earn his way through that. But there's always a plan B, a plan C, and it kind of unfortunately goes back to being an entrepreneur. Because if anything else, an entrepreneur could then own their own visa once their business is legally established and paying taxes. So, like that is essentially plan B. But guess what? My business is not legit yet. His business is not legit yet. We have to figure out how to do that to even get. And a business may not, like in the U.S. I can start a business today, go to the Secretary of State, get an EIN number, go to a bank, and in less than 7 days have all that set up. I don't know if that's the case here. Okay, it's like, kind of like insurance in Georgia. You can get a temporary insurance license. You have 6 months to use that insurance license, but in California, it takes 6 months to get an insurance license, and that's in the same country. So thinking about that again overseas, there's some variables and things that we need to really process. And until we understand and could then execute and take action on it, you got to stay on that damn student visa, and that may take 2 to 3 years. And by then, shit, you'll have your degree, and then at that point, you could start your own business. And if you decide to stay over here, then you can do that, right? Or you can kind of take a degree and move on. But these are all the different things that are constantly running through our minds. And I think the reason why we don't look stressed is because the intellectual aspect of who we are is always like literally like we're communicating. It's like these like this weird atoms and cells are just bouncing and exploding. And if those were to go quiet, if that noise would be reduced, then everything else kind of steps in and it kind of goes into like mental aspect of health. That's when the dark side happens. That's when you have an opportunity to sit down and reflect on the negative, which kind of leads me into the laws of attraction, the rules of attraction. And that's what got us here to begin with. We would not be where we are right now if we were not true believers in that. And I know it kind of seems fiction based to some individuals that are probably going through something hard right now, or they may be trying to find money to find their rent, or their business may be going under. But the more you dive into that negative aspect of what's going on in your life, is the deeper in that hole you're going to go versus thinking about positive. And I'm not saying to walk around happy go lucky and just say, fuck it, let the world just happen. You have to take action. You have to be responsible. You have to be organized. But the more positive you think, and then you pursue that positive with action, then you start to get the results. And that's why we're here. I mean, this whole thing started when we went to Spain just in like the last few years.
yeah,
Go ahead. I want you to
20,
tell about that in the Barcelona trip.
was it 2021? I think it was still during COVID because I got
Yeah.
COVID in Barcelona. But no, we knew that once we gone to Barcelona, we knew that we would move to Europe or we would move to overseas at some point. And when we first met, I was queen of I want to move to New York, yada yada yada. You
Mm-hmm.
can come with me if you want to. This is what we're doing. And then when we went to Barcelona, and we had done international travel before, so this wasn't anything brand new. We had been to China. Individually, we had been to respective places, but something about Barcelona we just knew was we needed to be somewhere very, very, very different. Just reminded us that. And we just kind of kept that mindset like from that moment on that we knew we would move overseas somewhere, not knowing where. And just kind of continued to head it in that direction. At the time, we didn't know that it would work out in this way with a job or anything. We were still very remote at that time. So my mindset was always, well, I will just go and work remote somewhere, but still stay with the same company and so forth. But I think it's, again, that laws of attraction or simulation, it's just we jokingly say, is that if you continue to have it on your mind and you continue to move forward, things always kind of fall in place. And
Weirdly
the
enough.
key to that is, though, when the thing falls into place, don't fear it. Just keep pushing against us. There were times, I would say, when this is sitting with me on this platter. Here it is. Here is this role. Here is this move. And we could have at that moment said, okay, we can't do this. It's too hard. We got a kid in college. We got a kid going to graduate. You know, we were dealing with things with our parents. It was just a lot of things. There were so many reasons for us to say, well, we cannot do this at all. And I don't, that's just kind of like not our minds. And then there were moments in this, I was like, okay, especially with this house thing, which was probably the biggest advice that I could provide anybody. I wouldn't say don't sell your house to move. I would just say be a little bit more strategic about it and give yourself time and space to get it done before you move. But that's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
But I think we consistently just knew that we were going to move. So every time a building block fell in place, it wasn't a matter of we're not going to do this. It was like, okay, how do we do this? Because this aligns with what we want to do. And I have one kind of final to that is I've always said that I will live on water at some point. And damn it, we're really close. We're so close.
Yeah. I think both of us had that same philosophy because I'm not a big beach person. I love the ocean. I don't love the sand. So I'm more of like a cliff. Ireland, I'm more like lakes. And the fact that we both had that vision for where we wanted to kind of be at one time or the other in our life. And the fact that we're here right now kind of goes into that. And I think the other thing too, that you're mentioning and that you're talking about, I want people to really understand, like everything that we've done and posted about was not a hasty decision. There was a lot of strategy, like literally, we had multiple houses and it was trying to figure out, okay, do we rent them all? Do we sell them all? Like my parents are in one house and it was like, okay, do we move them from that house to this bigger house and then rent out that house? Then we was looking at the equity play. Okay, this house has this much equity. This house has this much equity. Well, damn, the equity is damn near the same. Or we could then rent them both out and capitalize that capital and have those houses then fund us living over here, even though that you actually are working for someone, even though that I'm an entrepreneur and money's coming in, then all the money that's coming in, we can then invest in something and then take the money that we're getting from overseas to then pay for our life over here. So there was all these different variables. And then we hit those hurdles to where, okay, prime example, Corey school. Well, in the US, they don't check your damn bank account. They just say, okay, cool, here's the invoice, you pay for it. Before he could even apply for a student visa, one of the requirements was we had to then send them a bank statement with enough capital liquid, not saying, hey, we got this property we could potentially sell and get this amount for, or we have these stocks that we could sell. They wanted to see a liquid number that matches the minimum of 1 year of his tuition, 1 year of room and board, whether he's on campus or not on campus, 1 year of food and expenses. And it had to be liquid at that moment when we sent them that statement. Now, obviously, you could make that fake if you wanted to. You could be fraudulent. I have some friends that would probably send me a message behind closed doors and say, hey, could you go ahead and Photoshop this for me? But in reality, we had to make sure that was there. And then in addition to that, we had to have plan B. Okay, that capital is there. Then what are we looking like worst case scenario if something happens to either one of us? Like, where is that next dollars and cents coming from? Or what is that next capital coming from? And we just got to the point from the stress and from the strategy to say, okay, the best thing for us to do collectively for today, maybe 5 years out, maybe even 10 years down the road, let's sell one of the houses, keep the other house, liquidate, push through, is less stress for moving someone. We just take all the stress. We don't have to deal with my parents and their stress. We don't have to deal with consolidating everything at that house. And you even did the same thing with your dad's house, because we was like, okay, well, we had access to your dad's house, and we was like, okay, should we rent it out? And at that point in time, we were having this conversation about this global move, and you were just like, dude, I can't, like, just sell it. So selling that house, selling the other house, and now coming over here, it kind of gives us the opportunity not only to have liquid assets, but what's the thing that most people are basing their wealth off of collectively over a long period of time? And again, from the Boss Uncaged standpoint, real estate. Like, that's the only thing that you cannot build. I mean, besides Dubai, okay, they could build land, right? But still, understanding those principles and understanding money, understanding equity, understanding investments, That's the main reason why this podcast even existed to begin with, because these are the type of conversations that we're having with individuals on different levels, people that are looking for funding, people that have sold their companies for 10 figures, people that have not only sold their company, but they're sitting on $1 billion liquid or $1 billion in assets. But again, they started from somewhere, and how did they get there?
So much meat for this upcoming book. So much.
Yeah. Meat and potatoes. Meat and potatoes.
You know, I, you know, we've played around with it for a while, and I think it'll be a great idea because, you know, the research of it is also learning opportunities for us. And if in any way it's education, if in any form whatsoever, we can help somebody else who, through their own laws of attraction, help them make that decision. Because I will not lie to you, and anyone who has probably moved from one country or another to another will say it is not easy. I don't care if you are, you know, Jeff Bezos and you have a giant team of people who are essentially doing everything for you. It is what it is. It is hard.
Yeah.
And even if it's not logistically hard, because you got teams of people doing it for you, it's emotionally hard. It's, you know, so it's, yeah, but we'll save all that juiciness for the book. And I'm going to tell on you because I will be, because we're usually very honest as we can be. He almost said he was going to stop posting on Facebook. So you guys, y'all get him. What was that about?
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of goes back to like understanding mental health, right? I mean, physically, I'm an engine that can do it. I can go. But even engines need maintenance, and I think I was at that point to where mentally I was exerting so much to creating content. And again, I do content without even thinking about it, but it got to the point to where I had to stop for a minute and like, oh, wait a minute. And like my brain was like, bruh, like, and I remember those days years before I had the stroke. If I could flash back, I was like 5 years before I remember feeling like that, 10 years before I remember feeling like that. And then it started feeling like that more and more frequently. And I was just like, holy shit, like I may be stepping into that space again. And I'm sure as hell not trying to have another stroke. And I'm sure as hell trying to live long enough for technology to catch up so I could live the cloud forever. But ideally, that was a moment of me that, and I'm happy that you're my other half, because I like you gave me opportunity to kind of not be a bitch MF, blah, 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 whiny, sorry, son of a beep, 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 beep. But I was just coming to you just saying, like, you know what? I think I'm just going to like cancel. I'm going to shut down my account. Like I literally was saying, okay, I'm going to get on this plane. I did this one long ass post. I wrote all this content. People are commenting and following. The algorithm is like share, 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 share. And then I was going to go cold turkey, butt ass naked, turkey in the middle of Thanksgiving on your dining room table, dancing, and just say the hell with it. I'm not sending any other messages until.
The only Grant would have been on a plane so fast if he stopped posting. Just FYI. No, I mean, it was a very challenging time towards the end where you just feel like, I can just get on this plane and completely disappear. But I'm probably speaking for several, you know, people who follow you online, you know, your posts and your content. I am the complete opposite. I don't post unless I feel like something funny comes to my head, which may be like every 3 months or so. But people have come to rely on those posts, not only for updates on if we're alive, but also just from an education standpoint. So, you know, this is one of the points that we were going to talk about, like doing this by yourself. It is not something that you can do completely by yourself. And I know there are people who've done it. Don't get me wrong. It's not, I'm generalizing the statement probably poorly, but this is not something that you could do on your own. And there were times when I said, I can't do this. And you had to step in, and the apostille. Oh my God, that was my complete freak out moment, which I'll let you tell them about. But you know, you had your freak out moment the other day, was like, I'm gonna get on this plane and I'm never gonna post again. And I was like, damn, that's just not who you are. I mean, let's just be, you have so much information and knowledge to share, and then you're just, I love you, but you're just gonna be offloading it on me, and I am the audience that you don't need to be telling it to. So I'm glad you didn't quit us. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like I always said before, somebody always asked me, "Hey, if you win the lotto, what's the first thing you're gonna do?" Right? And some people's like, "I'm gonna buy a car." I'm just like, all that shit is stuff. The first thing that I always said that I would do when that opportunity came, when I had the opportunity to puff Magic Dragon, is burn my fingerprints first. Right? Now with technology catching up, get me some contacts, cover up my retina second. Right? Completely shave off my beard, never wear a hat again, completely change everything about who I am, and just become John Doe. And I was this close. I was
Well,
this close
I
because
think if we win
Koi,
the
yeah,
lottery, we
yeah,
still should do that, but that is another topic.
yeah,
So,
yeah. But I think it's funny because even without me saying that over the years, and I mean, you've heard me talk about it, but Koi is the living example of that. Like that dude is really on some burn his fingerprints. He is like, he's living my dream because he was like, dude, I didn't tell anyone at school. I didn't tell anyone I'm moving over the country. And I'm just,
we had kids coming over the house, and we were packing up, had boxes, and one of his friends said, "Are are are y'all moving?" And he was like, "Yeah." And they were like, "Where?" He's like, "Oh, we're moving to Amsterdam." And they were like, "You didn't tell us." And he was like, and literally, he cut everyone
right.
off. I mean,
He
he could
did.
do that. He's 18, so I
Yeah,
mean,
but I mean,
he's in contact with his family, which is most important. But the rest of them
mm.
folks,
But I
no.
mean, it's like being the talented Mr. Ripley. I could just pop up and be whoever I want to, and it just become whoever that person is in that country. Could you imagine having all these different personalities? So again, I'm in La La Land, and obviously I'm S.A. Grant, and I'm the founder and host of Boss Uncaged, and that's who I am. So I can't just cut ties with that. But I was this close to saying fuck it all and just and again, I probably would have started a whole nother podcast, changed my name, changed my look. I'd have been a completely different person. And the irony is with 8 billion people in the world, the people that listen to Boston Cage probably never would have found the new episode and never would like, you kind of look like somebody I know. I would have even changed my voice. When I learned about Michael Jackson changing his voice, rapper changing their voice, I would have completely had a different tonality, different voice. I'd have been probably a high pitched Michael Jackson or a deep Barry White. Who knows? But I'm still S.A. Grant, the founder and host of Boston Cage, and I love you.
Anyway, let's talk about season seven a little bit, or what we have coming in
Mm,
season eight, which I think we kind of alluded to a little bit with what's coming in
mm,
season eight, is that, we're going to stand up our shows. Um, we may, he's going to go on pause for a little bit with, recording some new content just for a little while we
mm,
adjust to our new environment. We don't want to rush the process. We don't want it to be sloppy. And, like I said, right now we're recording essentially in the same room. So if you hear some feedback, that's probably why, but this is just the space that we
mm,
have right now. So we're
mm,
going to take a little bit of time off to kind of get moved and reoriented, but the content won't stop, which is really good. And
mm.
that's just kind of how we're coming up for season eight. But going back a little bit for season seven, we did have some really cool episodes this year. We kicked off season seven with your boy Lance from Japan. Um,
Oh shit!
yeah,
Has it been that long?
it has been. Yep.
Damn. Speaking of which, if Lance is listening to this and if Damon is listening to this, I'm going to follow up with a LinkedIn because Damon is flying out to Japan next week, right? So you two need to definitely connect. And I told him the story about you fighting amongst the 300 million sperm cells and you were the winner. Okay. Like that has stained me for the rest of my life. Every time I look at someone and I look at them, I'm like, that person's a champion. Like that person is a winner because you did. Everyone did have to fight amongst millions of sperm cells to become the one. So yes, Lance, that dude, if you ever have opportunity to go to Japan, Lance, he would change you because not only is he older, he's like 70 something, but his soul is 25. The dude is he looks young as hell, but he's 70 something, but his soul is 25 and it will forever be 25 years old. He'll be 120 years based upon technology and he will still be 25 years old. 100%. I got it, Lance.
Yes, I can't ever imagine him getting
Mm,
old, which would be so weird for me. I think he's
no.
a recently new grandfather too, so having
Mm,
grandkids gives you a bit of, life back for the most part. So he's gonna live to
mm.
at least about 200 at minimum. So
Easy. And his
yeah.
sons are just like him too. I mean, that's a crazy thing. Like he's a business owner. Obviously, we interviewed him on the podcast, but recently his son kind of stepped into real estate and started creating these awesome, like artistically creative personality videos. And like the first one that I saw was just obviously the video is great because his dad's been recording videos, so he's probably getting that from his dad. His dad's been in the video for a long time, but just the way he delivers it, like real estate agents should definitely take a look. And I'm not going to tell you who he is because I don't want you to bite his shit because I know he's on the upward climb, and I'm gonna let him run that bull until it peaks. But I think eventually, a few years down the road, he should be more than successful. He should be an industry name, someone that people should look up to because of the way he's delivering the content on the real estate and his charisma and his style, and he owns it 100%. And even for me, from a business standpoint, he's an inspiration because again, he's coming new into the market and he gives zero fucks. He's doing it his way, how he wants to do it, and he's delivering valuable, insightful content.
All of that and above for the most part. I know this season we were able to get Casey on. Casey is like a close friend who just for a multitude of reasons, I'm gonna miss seeing her face, you know, grabbing lunch or food with her on occasion. Other than that, I'm just like looking at the episodes we had. I say this every time we do one of these. You can't pick a favorite kid. And I and admittedly, with us being right in the middle of the move, the core of the move during season 7, I didn't get to listen to as many as I normally would because normally I put them out and then I'm bad. I probably should listen to them before. Don't judge me, but I put them out and then I usually listen to them in the car while I'm commuting. So we did have some really good episodes. We had the fitness boss, we had a party boss, the epic, but the soul writer boss, for the most part we had, and then Casey was the confident boss. So if you haven't done that already, go back, check out season 7, season 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm still trying to get you to go back and re-interview season 1, folks. So, you know, help me. If you hear this, people out there in the universe, I would like to go back and interview some of the season 1 folks just to see how things are going. How did they survive COVID? How did, you know, are their business still doing well? You know, what challenges did they face? So wink, wink. Maybe he's not listening to me, so maybe he'll listen to y'all. But yeah,
I listen to everyone. I mean, it just, for me, there's so much more room and expansion for Boss Uncaged as the individual podcast. The one that you're describing, I'm almost thinking it as a spin-off podcast, like an after dark, like a after Boss Uncaged. And I have no idea conceptually what I would name that because again, recycling people on a podcast that has essentially 8 billion people that it can get to, as far as interviewing people over a period of time, stepping and repeating, it just becomes kind of difficult in the sense that we're in a new country with new people. We could easily get a few hundred people here versus like the few hundred or 1,000 that we have access to in the US. So recycling them is going to be difficult unless it's a sub podcast or another podcast. Because I mean, even Milano reached out because I mean, where Milano was and where he is right now is night and day. I mean, Tao, our first episode, like she is like my sister, my friend, like she what she's done during COVID and how she's adapted. Yes, we can kind of completely do an entire new episode. Like she is a new person versus who she was then, because again, she's grown and prospered so much through the darkest times in our lifetimes. She came out on top. So yes, it may be a couple people, but ideally, I think it should be a completely separate podcast for individuals to realize that, okay, you could start off here, you could have a plan of execution to get here, and then the multiverse happens.
Yes.
There's divergence of different things that will happen to where your path can be completely different. And a prime example of that, I think we talked about it. We've interviewed some people in a year's time, and a year later, their complete business has changed. Their complete business is either they've deleted that LLC and started something new. Like I've seen people that went from trying to sell digital products to actually being more like, I think he was like a voiceover artist. I was like, what? How do you go from digital products to then becoming a voiceover artist within a year and a half? You completely, and again, that's what business is. You have to kind of go through the motions. You have to stay with it. You have to stick to it. You have to take actions. But when I guess the gods or whatever around you starts talking to you and telling you that you may be going down the wrong direction, and it's not an emotional decision, it's something just doesn't feel right. Something about what you're doing is taking you down the wrong path. Then you have to cut all ties and then move in the direction that you ideally want to go in for the long term. Message.
I think we've covered a lot in this show. And like I said, I agree that I think the book, or I don't know if this would be what it will be, we'll just say the information that we've learned through this international move process is something that we really want to share. I mean, that just is our personality. We're knowledge sharers. So there'll be more coming on that. And like I said, we're getting ready to go into season 8 of the podcast. So we got shows already lined up. We are catching up on our backlog. We have not put a show out in 3 weeks. So we'll be spending the next couple of days getting caught up on that and getting everything set up for season 8. Yeah. Have anything you want to close us out with?
Yeah, and the beautiful part about that is like if you're a new listener, let's say you're hearing this episode, and again, I'm a futurist, you're hearing this episode a month from now, and we're saying that we missed 3 episodes. The beautiful part about technology is that this episode is going to go back in time and it's going to fill that void, and all the other episodes are going to come afterwards. So by the time you actually hear this, we'll probably be on episode 6 of season 8 in reality, because we're going to flood the backlog and also we're going to backdate this episode as well. And it's just kind of talking about strategies like that. I think I'm trying to remember the statement, and it was like my father used to say it all the time, and it was funny as hell. And he used to say something like a Jamaican, like a wise man always says, "Think forward, never think backward." But ideally, in order for you to kind of move forward, sometimes you don't have to think backward. You have to remember what has happened in order to move forward in the right direction, so you don't repeat any mistakes that you've made. So when you are listening to this podcast, keep in mind that what you're hearing today may be fruitful for you or it may not be. But at some time in your duration of business, each episode is articulated to wherever you are. So if you're selling your first million, or you're selling your first billion, or you're selling your first product, there is an episode in this podcast that's directed directly to you wherever you are. And the goal here is to take that information and not sit on it. It's to take action, so then another episode will then become relevant for you. Then another episode will become relevant. The idea here is you take these building blocks and you formalize them that will make you take action to get to the level of success that you want to. Message.
Message. I've
Yes.
never heard of that before, but okay.
What the Jamaican thing?
Yeah, the message.
Oh, message that was from a movie. It was don't be a menace while drinking your juice in South Central.
Oh yeah, I remember that movie.
Yes, yes. And I think it was Keenan. He would pop out, he was the mail guy. Message, message. Yes. Classic. As you can tell, like my mind is all over the place. But it's probably going to get more interesting, because I mean, I think part of what we were talking about as far as streamlining the process of this podcast, we've got a lot of streamlined processes, but the topics that we should be talking about, I think, kind of goes into isolating it. And again, I'm not making it in stone, but isolating it based upon international. I think international is going to be more of the reoccurring theme as from a business standpoint, because again, obviously you could be a rich, wealthy person and be just in your country, in your world, in your city, but what are you doing on a global platform? We're all global citizens. What are we doing to give back to a global community, not just the isolated 2 blocks from my house community? And obviously, yes, you may live in that country, you pay taxes in that country, and sometimes you hear somebody, they opened up a like a school in Uganda, and you're like, you live in Maine, why the hell you opened up a school in Uganda? And it didn't really dawn on me until we are where we are right now. That's why, because it's not just about where you live, it's about the collective of all of us working together to be a more united front. And you have to think more international to even get to that point versus thinking local. And essentially, local is kind of a little bit on the selfish side. Like there's so much information that we can give to other cultures and other communities, and we can take from them as well, instead of just being stuck in our own visions of what our world is and being completely hyper focused on just our 4 walls that we live
Hmm. Message.
in. Yeah, I'm spit. So you would think that, like like I'm on shrooms or something because I'm just dropping messages all like the end of this podcast. I'm on a rhythm of messages. But yeah, all seriousness aside, I think it took us 8 seasons, well, 7 seasons to get to where we are. So my last message is if you are a new podcaster, if you are a new business and you're listening to this, it took us 7 seasons to get to where we are, to be as natural as we're speaking, to be as exposed and transparent, and to be as fluid as we are. That shit did not happen season 1. It did not happen season 2. It did not happen season 3. And if you're lucky enough, maybe it'll happen season 4. Maybe it'll happen season T. Maybe it won't happen to season 10. But you have to keep on working that. And as long as your heart, your soul, your mind, your collective is in what you're doing and your passion and desires are all there, then you're going on the right path. But don't give up as these hurdles come. Push through them shits. Put a stick of dynamite and explode through the wall that's you're going to be confronted to on your journey. That's it.
It's time for dinner, Mr. Grant.
Yeah. So this is kind of going to the foodie podcast. I'm about to grill up these I guess lamb steaks, lamb shoulder steaks, and a couple chickens. So I mean, it's definitely. I'll say that for the foodie podcast this Wednesday. I'm not going to bridge the gap between them because I'm changing over to foodie. But with that, I think this is a hell of an episode. I'm happy that you joined me. Since you called me out, I'm going to call you out in closing. She almost didn't want to come on this episode. She's been telling me for the past 3 weeks, just do it yourself. And so for the past 3 weeks, I was like, I refuse to air a fucking episode by myself when the people want you. They only hear from you twice a season. And the reality is that if I think collectively we both start doing these episodes together, the magnitude of reach that we can get will be probably tenfold versus just me and my crazy self by myself. Yes. So yes, you've been called out. And I'm happy that you did this episode. And I'm sure the listeners are even more happy and more content with your delivery and what you brought to the table and shit, just being your other half. I definitely appreciate you because I probably would have been on the news for not positive things in the past few years of all the things that have happened, just getting to the point to where we are. I love you and I appreciate you. And with that, Boss Uncaged, S.A. Grant, over and out.